relies on the mainstream media to inform you about the people and events in the world, you're being taken for a ride. It's convenient to say that the mainstream media are failing us, but that would be wrong. The mainstream media do a very good job for that top 1% of plutocrats who own and control the bulk of media in this country. I work just a few blocks from the United Nations, and it's been interesting to see all the activity surrounding Ahmadinejad's visit. Police everywhere, roads blocked off, patrol boats in the East River. But what has been most interesting is to see and read the way the U.S. media does its job of misinforming us about Ahmadinejad. The various opinions I've heard over the last few days have been varied, but just about everyone agrees that he's a bad guy, a nut, a sick person. He wants to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. He wants to pick up where Hitler left off. And he actually denies the Holocaust ever happened. The president of Columbia University summed up these ignorant and racist attitudes quite nicely when he rudely introduced Ahmadinejad as a cruel and petty dictator. Would you be surprised to learn that almost nothing you've heard about Ahmadinejad is true? The line about wiping Israel off the face of the map? The truth probably wouldn't sell as many newspapers. And it would probably go something like this. The Iranian president has quoted Ayatollah Khomeini, who died 17 years ago, as saying, "The occupation regime over Jerusalem must be erased from the pages of time." And how does he advocate that regime being erased from the pages of time? This maniac, this nutball, actually believes in democracy. Yeah, crazy. He advocates a referendum in which all people, Christians, Muslims, and Jews, would vote and decide their own fate with outside interference. I mean, obviously the guy is a problem. What about the Holocaust? Well, first let me point out that these same hypocrites who go crazy about Ahmadinejad are usually mum when it comes to the Armenian genocide, because it's politically convenient to do so. I don't hear anyone going crazy about Israel denying the Armenian genocide. Give you an example. Then Foreign Minister Shimon Peres, on a trip to Turkey, said that the Armenian genocide is a matter for historians to decide. Yeah, and they have decided it. And Israel continues to deny it. Ahmadinejad has said about the same thing regarding the Holocaust. He also makes some very good points. I think what ruffles people's feathers is that he begins a statement like, well, if the Holocaust did happen, and people get all crazy and say, if, what do you mean if? And they don't hear the rest of what he says. He goes on to say that if the Holocaust really did happen, and Germans, and to a greater extent Europeans, are responsible for the murder of 6 million Jews, how exactly did the Palestinians fit into this equation? And why was land stolen from the Palestinians for what the Germans did to the Jews? Doesn't compute. Why didn't we allocate part of Germany for the Jews? Or part of Europe? Or he even goes on like, why don't we, if the United States cares so much, why don't we give them Alaska? Right? We're not really using it, are we? And why the Palestinians bore the brunt of Israeli aggression for all this time? The last thing I'll mention is the idiotic statement of the president of Columbia University, that Ahmadinejad is a cruel and petty dictator. As one of my favorite bloggers at Left Eye on the News pointed out, one of his Ahmadinejad's very first acts in office was to allow women to attend football games, what we call soccer. This was met with strong opposition from the Ayatollahs and was quickly overturned. This dictator couldn't even get women allowed in at the soccer matches. Some dictator, right? Add Ahmadinejad to the long list of bad guys. Add Ahmadinejad to the long list of bad guys. We're supposed to hate him, and by extension, the people of Iran. It will make it easier if and when Bush decides to attack Iran. You will be convinced that the Iranian president is just plain crazy, evil, mean, whatever you want to say, and he forced our hand. We had no choice but to attack. With that in mind, I would like to turn your attention to this wonderful map. That is Iran in the middle. You'll notice that there are American flags completely surrounding Iran. Those represent U.S. military bases, and no doubt you'll recognize many of the countries surrounding. Iran is completely surrounded by U.S. forces. Hundreds of thousands of U.S. forces completely surround Iran. Bush and company have repeatedly threatened violence against Iran. And where are Iranian soldiers? Are they massing on the borders of Mexico or Canada? Are they surrounding us? Do we have Iranian gunboats off the coast of Long Beach? No. Iranian soldiers are in Iran where they belong. While you're thinking about that, I'd like you to also recall the Iranian response to the attacks on 9/11. On behalf of the Iranian government and the nation, I condemn the hijacking attempts and terrorist attacks on public centers in American cities, which have killed a large number of innocent people, President Khatami said in reaction to the worst attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor. My deep sympathy goes out to the American nation, particularly those who have suffered from the attacks, and also the families of the victims. He said, noting, terrorism is doomed and the international community should stem it and take effective measures in a bid to eradicate it. Khatami added that the Islamic Republic of Iran is treading a road to uproot terrorism, and to this end, he noted, it will spare no efforts. And it's also interesting to recall some of the stories that followed shortly after that kind of point to Iran's response to 9/11. Something we do well to remember at this juncture. Iranians honor U.S. with a moment of silence. The New York Post. Khatami condemns terrorist attacks on U.S. targets, the People's Daily, Iran. U.S. calls Iran's response positive, the Economic Times. Terror attacks transform U.S. image in Iran's media, the Gulf News. Powell sees hope in Iran's serious response to attack, Reuters. Iran News deplores attack on major U.S. landmarks, Iran News. Iran expresses rare sympathy for U.S. over attacks. Iran Ayatollah says he is heartbroken over U.S. attack, the Gulf News. And an AP story that headlined, Iran seals the Afghanistan border. Before I wrap up, I suppose it'd also be important to remind everyone that it was the world's largest terrorist organization, the CIA, that toppled the democratically elected leader of Iran in 1953 and installed the Shah. The Shah was a real live dictator, and we were quite cozy with him. And ironically enough, there were even plans in the works to provide the Shah with nuclear technology. One can only imagine what the response to the United States would be if some foreign nation even attempted to overthrow Bush or any of our quasi-democratically elected representatives. Nuclear annihilation? Lastly, Iran has every right to develop nuclear energy. It has broken no laws or treaties, and don't let them fool you. Don't let them trick us into another war. Iran shows no signs of aggression. Let's keep pushing for regime change here at home. Let's continue to push for impeachment and pressure our so-called leaders to pursue diplomacy rather than war. Let's give peace a chance.